What is up, DTube Steam blockchain? So today I want to do a video talking a little bit about thoughts about smaller technology, micro smartphones, the microchip. Yeah, I mean, clearly, hey, we see technology getting more advanced and you can do more with less. So the Galaxy S3 from, let's say, 2012, you could do less with that device. You could do less with that device than a brand new Galaxy Note 10, which I may buy. Why is that the case? Well, one of the reasons here is because it's not just about the device. It's about the infrastructure. And this is the same thing as with crypto. The crypto is so new right now, so there's no big infrastructure in place to do certain things. Same as if you got a Galaxy device, Galaxy S3 2012, there was no real infrastructure, or it was a worse infrastructure when it comes to other people with the same technology, other people with high-end smartphones. So be first can be cool with some new technology, but then you realize the limits when you don't have an infrastructure where there's not a foundation, there's not other people with same devices. So you kind of are restricted because of the infrastructure. And then of course, yeah, the device a little bit slower than, for example, what you can get 2019 now with the Galaxy Note 10 and all these devices coming out. But we see, okay, first of all, we now see this trend of devices that can sort of start to make value on their own with blockchain technology. And then again, we see here that it's not just about the tech device. The tech device is just the interface, but really the infrastructure that is in the cloud or whatever it now is located, the infrastructure that is being put in place on other places, that is really what makes the big difference. But of course, yeah, the device is also somewhat important because it makes you be able to record things. You need a good camera. Yeah, maybe you need a good screen to be able to see stuff better. Maybe you need to compute stuff better locally on the device. So, of course, the infrastructure and the technology both play a part. So one thing, if you just look at it pretty quick, you just glance at it pretty fast, it looks like not that much has changed between 2012 and 2019. It seems like super stagnant. The main reason for that is because most of the stuff has been going on behind the scenes with the infrastructure that is not really that much to do with the device, but just this thing that people need to have the devices in their hands, right? And also that you need to put up servers and whatever it is, for whatever it is you want to do. And then people sort of have to update the way they look at life, look at things, and learn new languages with these tech devices. But, you know, just a quick glance at it, it looks like not that much happened 2012, 2019. But the big thing is now when the devices are going to be able to make their own value, right? When you can like make a video and then make some tokens or something like that. So it makes so the device becomes eventually free because you'll be able to do some task, right? And it's right in your face. And then after you do that task, and if you do that sort of daily, then eventually the device, you will always be able to have the latest high-end device, right? So one thing, so talking about smaller technology, one of the trends that we're seeing right now, of course, is bigger technology. So devices seems to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We have the tablets. We have smartphones always trying to push the screen size to a bigger screen, right? But I think quite soon we are going to see a movement towards smaller devices again, where maybe people are gonna look at this sort of different in terms of that instead of having a device, it's more gonna be looked at, you just have a screen or you have an interface. This can be done with virtual reality, but the base thing is you just need some device that can, let's say, generate some kind of screen interface. And this is something I talked about in the past, that the smartphone is moving from a mechanical device to an energy machine. And the most energy efficient eventually is going to be to just have the cheapest screen possible and have everything else in the cloud, which means eventually you're just going to need a small thing. I'm not sure what it's going to be, but it seems that is eventually where it's going to go. One, like a remote control. So the smartphone right now is like a remote control, but if you could have some smaller gadget that was more resource efficient or battery efficient, because one of the problems with these devices right now is the battery doesn't last that long, and we now see recently that Samsung, maybe in 2 years, are gonna do some graphene technology to have better batteries, which means that we'll probably be able to make it so you eventually can have smaller devices and more look at it how you can make it better to sort of separate some core remote control. And this is also something I talked about, that some smaller device that can just do whatever you want it to do. Like if it's just a voice assistant and stuff like that, maybe you don't need an interface. Why do you need all this expensive hardware that you're probably never going to use? So super expensive GPU, CPU. I mean, isn't the most of the stuff that you want to do, you just need some kind of connection with the internet, and that is actually the main thing. And this is kind of slowing down at the moment. It seems that like nothing is happening. It's because 2016 we got the mechanical virtual reality with the HTC Vive. They sort of starting to play with it, but it still is virtual reality, which is very mechanical. When virtual reality becomes like an energy machine, that is really when exciting stuff is going to come. So I think that's going to happen. We're probably going to get like cool virtual reality maybe 2025 or something like that. That is probably when virtual reality is going to be working more as an energy machine, not be so mechanical, not be so clunky, not be so big. So HTC Vive, for example, right now is super clunky. Came 2016. It's probably going to take 10 years from that until we get really good virtual reality, which is easy to use, not a hassle, and you don't have to think. And when they make it that easy, everyone's like gonna use it because it's just better, right? It's just more engaging, more fun, right? Why look into a small little screen when you can have some inclusive virtual experience, right? So I think how it's gonna go with, call it what you want, a microchip, micro remote, micro smartphone. It's gonna be some small gadget, I think, that's gonna work as a remote control, and then the interface is just, you're gonna have some kind of screen, right? It's gonna be some kind of screen. Who knows how it's gonna work? If it's gonna be some small lens or whatever, but it's gonna be something. It's gonna be something, and it's gonna be kind of cool. But it looks like a joke right now, mainly because the infrastructure is not in place. So it's like, even if you, cool tech always comes, and then it's like, okay, this is super cool, but what's the use of it if no other people is using it, right? So it's always this funny thing in technology. You have super cool technology, it can come 30 years too early, and if no one else is using it, it's like, okay, what's the point of this? So it's quite interesting how you can do more on a smaller display. I don't understand at the moment, for example, why you can't have 8 screens on a device. Is there any limit built into the software, because it's like we can do this with Windows, with Linux. We can have like 8 screens up and running at the same time. It seems as we should be able to do that with smartphones as well. I think max right now you can use 3 screens. So you can do like 3 tasks at the same time. And we know people love multitasking. So if you make a phone can have like 8 dual screens up at the same time, that's going to be a more useful device, right? And then it just makes sense that, wait a sec, we don't need this big display. If I can have 1 centimeter window on my screen open up, and I can do all on that screen, then okay, that's kind of cool, right? And then it's going to be like, okay, wait a sec, we can have an AI that sort of automate even that little task that you kind of wanted to do on the screen, so you don't even have to do that little thing as well, right? So there's a lot of small mini tasks we do on a day-to-day basis, which basically can be automated and probably will be automated. How it's gonna look, who knows? But we can see from what we're doing right now that we're kind of gonna do it's like we see the tasks that you must do right now, and we see how much of it can be automated. Like if you observe a human, you can see that almost all they do, you can somehow automate it, right? And it's not magic. It's really not magic at all. And of course, that is also what then we're gonna use, or what we are gonna do with these devices. It's gonna be, people love to just set something to run, and then they can do what they want, right? Some people call this utopia. You can call it whatever you want, but it clearly is going to a phase where you can do all with a small device. And it's a small device that needs internet. Like, you need some kind of internet connection to this device, and you need open source software to be able to experiment what you can do with this device. And open source is kind of interesting, because it becomes like, it can go very deep into like very philosophical discussion of like when people are producing data on the internet, and then other people can use that sort of data. And let's say you have some kind of software, like let's say a person takes a selfie, another person sort of takes that selfie and sort of makes a new human out of it by just changing the nose a little bit of it. It's like you get into this creator phase where people can mix and remix stuff. And I think eventually it's probably going to come to the stage where people just going to see it as natural, that people can remix and sort of try to create anything they want. They can sort of take any sort of movie and mix it with any sort of music and sort of try to use some kind of AI to sort of make some new remix of it. That is the general trend of it. And right now it's kind of taboo. If you try to share certain things, maybe you get a copyright strike or something like that. But eventually we're probably going to look back at that time and look at it like, okay, that was kind of weird, kind of copyright strikes and stuff like that, because there's probably going to be better ways to sort of make money or make profit, that people are going to realize, wait a sec, if everything sort of gets shared around, people sort of get a better product eventually, and you can sort of make progress that way. Of course, there's never any guarantees. There's never any guarantees for how it's going to play out, because technology doesn't really have a mind of its own. It's like, it doesn't have a mind of its own. Technology is just technology, and then humans can use it, right? It's the humans basically that decides how technology is being used. Like when a person is interacting with technology, I mean, they're sort of shaping where technology is going, by looking at what they invest time, energy, and resource into. And that's why you're going to see a lot of projects that sort of fade away quite fast, and then you're gonna see new projects sort of pop up, and yeah, it is an age of remixing. And now we have these you have a bunch of companies that sort of like they're making they're finding like these industries where they can sort of make money in terms of like, oh, we can buy 100 smartphones and we can just follow people on pages, and then or like on Instagram, and then we can sort of charge for this, right? We can like give people likes, give people follows. And then you see it is, and then you realize eventually, wait a second, instead of having all these devices, can't we just have one box that does it all? Because we already see that with virtual simulations. We already see it in games as well. It's like, why do we need to use all these devices? Can't we have one box that does all? We can. We probably can. It's just that the technology needs to become more advanced. The software needs to become better. And you basically need more people to look at this stuff. But it seems as it's going towards micro technology. And it's kind of interesting how you have these companies that tries to sort of make money on like slowing stuff down. So for example, YouTube tries to sort of slow it down in terms of, oh, pay for a premium so you can like listen in the background. And it's like, is these petty ways they seem to want to make money on instead of like looking at like the bigger stuff, right? So it's always this struggle between, let's say, the status quo and sort of where stuff is going, right? People sort of want to hold on to old systems. And old systems, just because people really want to hold on to them, they can go on for decades, right? Decades longer than what it actually should have gone. So it's interesting times, really interesting, to be honest. Also, some quick thoughts about micro technology. The only thing it can do is it cannot create new faculties. Like, it cannot create new physical power. It can only give us more of what we already sort of have, right? It cannot do anything new. Like, it can only do what we're doing now, but doing it more. So that's also something that's kind of fun to think about. It looks like it's eventually going to move to a phase where it's quite, maybe you can call it physical mastery, dematerialized. I'm not sure if you can call it that, but it looks like when you have perfect mobility, you have the perfect technology to be able to express something however you want. It seems like you're moving into a phase of physical mastery, right? And it's interesting. It's interesting. You see people sort of starting to question, like, oh, is this like virtual reality? Or is this a simulation? And it's just natural that humans eventually move into that phase, especially when they're seeing how stuff is working out. So yeah, that's what I want to talk a little bit about today. It's going to be interesting to follow technology. It seems to be speeding up, and it gets harder and harder and harder to see into the future, right? So yeah, quick video here. Have a great day, DTube and the Steam blockchain.